The roar inside the Estadio Azteca is deafening. Millions are holding their breath. And for the Mexican national team, the weight of an entire nation rests on this single opening whistle. But what if I told you that the final score of this match wasn't decided on the pitch today, but was whispered into existence decades ago by a woman who couldn't even see the grass? Baba Vanga, the blind mystic whose prophecies have chilled the world with their uncanny accuracy, from 9/11 to the rise of global shifts, left behind a cryptic legacy for the year 2026. Tucked away within her visions of a changing world is a specific startling omen regarding a great triumph in the land of the eagle during a summer of unprecedented global gathering. Skeptics call it a coincidence, and analysts point to the grueling statistics of FIFA rankings, but as El Tri prepares to step into the most watched opening match in history, the legend of the Balkan Nostradamus is casting a massive, unshakable shadow over the stadium. Did she truly see Mexico's victory before the tournament was even conceived? Or are we witnessing the birth of the most elaborate sports conspiracy of the century? Before the first goal is even scored, the prophecy has already begun to unfold. To understand the gravity of this moment, we have to look beyond the touchline. We are standing on the precipice of the largest sporting event in human history, where the sheer scale of the 2026 World Cup dwarfs everything that came before it. For Mexico, this opening match isn't just a game. It's a high-stakes reclamation of national pride staged in the cathedral of football, the Estadio Azteca. But when you layer a decades-old prophecy over a multi-billion-dollar tournament, the atmosphere shifts from sports to something far more visceral. Think about the implications. If this vision holds weight, we aren't just watching athletes compete. We are watching a predetermined destiny unfold in real time. While analysts scramble to find a tactical edge through data in heat maps, historians are digging through Vanga's transcripts, searching for the exact moment the land of the eagle was mentioned. Is this a statistical impossibility or a spiritual certainty? The world is watching not just for the goals, but to see if a blind woman from a remote Bulgarian village could see through the fog of time better than the most advanced predictive models of the modern age. The pressure on these 11 players has just transcended the physical. It has become a matter of cosmic proportions. Vanga's reputation as the Nostradamus of the Balkans isn't built on vague guesses. It's forged in the chilling accuracy of her past visions. From the collapse of the Soviet Union to the tragedy of the Twin Towers, her track record has earned her a seat at the table of global mysteries. So when translated transcripts suggest a great awakening for a nation in the West during a time of global gathering, the footballing world stops to listen. To the average fan, the logic seems grounded in reality. Mexico is a footballing juggernaut when playing on home soil. The sheer altitude of Mexico City, combined with the deafening roar of over 80,000 souls at the Estadio Azteca, creates an environment where physics and psychology work against any opponent. It is a place where legends are born and giants are toppled. The surface-level narrative is incredibly compelling. You have a team hungry for redemption, a nation unified by a singular obsession, and a schedule that puts them center stage on the opening night. In the eyes of the public, Vanga's prophecy is simply the spiritual confirmation of what they already feel in their hearts, that 2026 is the year the land of the eagle finally reclaims its throne. We are told to expect a celebration of heritage, a display of tactical brilliance, and a victory that will echo through the streets of Guadalajara to the Zócalo of Mexico City. It feels like a script already written, a story of triumph that is as inevitable as the sunrise. Every headline, every social media thread, and every sports talk show is focused on this singular, glorious outcome. They see the path to victory as a straight line paved with tradition and destiny. The general consensus is that the stars have aligned, and the El Tri of 2026 is merely the vessel for a prophecy decades in the making. However, when you stop looking at the flashing lights of the stadium and start examining the cold, cryptic details hidden within the original Bulgarian transcripts, the picture begins to lose its clarity. The closer we look at the specific phrasing attributed to the blind mystic, the more we realize that what we've been told might only be the most comfortable version of the truth. There are shadows in the prophecy that the analysts have chosen to ignore. The victory we are all anticipating rests on a linguistic house of cards. When the original Bulgarian texts are scrutinized by those who understand the nuance of Vanga's dialect, the word often translated as triumph carries a much heavier, more double-edged meaning. In the Slavic tradition of prophecy, a rising can just as easily signal a fall from grace as it can a climb to glory. The transcripts don't mention a scoreboard. They mention a shattering of the old glass and a crown of thorns gifted in the heat. Why has no one mentioned the silent stadium she described? If Mexico is destined to win, why would the atmosphere she envisioned be one of hushed breaths and sudden stillness? The narrative of a festive celebration in the streets of Mexico City ignores a chilling detail hidden in the margins of her 2026 visions, the mention of a stolen light during the Festival of the World. Think about the timing. The opening match isn't just a game. It is a global broadcast, a moment where billions of eyes are fixed on a single point in space and time. Vanga's warnings often centered on moments of peak human attention, using them as markers for shifts in the global consciousness. What if the awakening she spoke of isn't the jubilation of a goal, but a revelation that occurs while the world is looking the other way? The pace of the prophecy suggests something far more frantic than a 90-minute match. She spoke of steel birds trembling and the eagle's nest being watched by eyes that do not blink. This isn't the language of sports commentary. It's the language of a high-stakes geopolitical or even metaphysical event. While the pundits analyze the 4-3-3 formation and the fitness of the strikers, they are missing the seismic shift occurring beneath the pitch itself. The victory might not belong to the players in the green jerseys, but to a force that benefits from the world being distracted by the beautiful game. We are being lured into a sense of festive security, ignoring the fact that every one of Vanga's most accurate predictions came with a heavy price. The question isn't whether Mexico will win. The question is, what will the world lose in the moment that they do? The countdown hasn't just begun for a kickoff. It has begun for a reckoning that no one is prepared to televise. This is where the mainstream analysis fails. It treats Vanga's visions like a sports ticker, but her prophecies were never about the score on a screen. The victory we are waiting for isn't a tally of goals. It's a capture of consciousness. If you look deeper into the classified archives of her 1996 sessions, a terrifying hidden truth emerges. The word for Mexico, in her specific regional dialect, wasn't just a reference to the nation, but to the place of the center, a geographical coordinate she called the mirror of the sun. The shock isn't that Mexico might win. The shock is that the game is a ritualistic trigger. There is a hidden layer to the 2026 opening match that no sports analyst is talking about. While the cameras focus on the players, a specific high-frequency synchronization will be occurring. Vanga spoke of a silver net draped over the masses and hearts beating as one until they stop. This isn't poetic metaphor. Modern neuroscientists have recently theorized about collective neural entrainment, where millions of people focusing on a single point in time can actually alter local geomagnetic fields. Vanga saw this half a century ago. She predicted that the opening wouldn't be the start of a tournament, but the opening of a gateway. Think about the stadium itself. The Estadio Azteca is built on volcanic ground, a site ancient civilizations believed was a portal. When Vanga mentioned the hushed breaths, she wasn't describing a disappointed crowd. She was describing a global blackout, a stolen light that occurs exactly when the world's attention is at its absolute peak. The victory she predicted for Mexico is actually a seizure of the moment, a specific minute in the broadcast where the signal doesn't just transmit images, but receives something back from the viewers. The pace is accelerating. Look at the technology being installed in the 2026 venues: ultra-high-definition facial recognition biometric scanners at every gate and 6G integration that maps the emotional state of every fan in the stands. This isn't for security, it is for the harvest Vanga warned about. She said, when the eagle screams in the heat, the machines will know your soul. While you are cheering for a goal, the eyes that do not blink, the satellites and AI systems will be executing a protocol that has nothing to do with football. The victory belongs to the architects of this digital cage. We have been so distracted by the prophecy of a win that we miss the prophecy of the trap. The countdown to the opening match isn't a clock ticking toward a game. It is a fuse burning toward a global reset that will happen live in front of 4 billion people while they are too busy celebrating to notice the sky changing color. You aren't watching the game. The game is watching you. The tragedy of the modern enthusiast lies in their total reliance on the superficial. Sports pundits will spend the next 2 years dissecting Mexico's tactical evolution, debating whether their strikers can handle the pressure of a home opener under the lights of the Estadio Azteca. They will talk about possession percentages, heat maps, and expected goals as if these numbers are the ultimate truth of the event. But this is the fatal flaw of the conventional mind. It assumes the event is about the athletes. It treats the World Cup as a vacuum of entertainment, disconnected from the very ground it is played upon, and the signals being sent into the atmosphere. By focusing only on the grass and the ball, the mainstream remains blind to the massive technological and spiritual architecture being erected around them. While they analyze a 4-3-3 formation, they ignore the fact that the venue sits atop a tectonic and energetic crossroads, a site specifically chosen not for its seating capacity, but for its conductivity. This is the exclusive insight that mainstream media refuses to touch because it defies their sterile, data-driven narrative. To the average analyst, a win for Mexico is a boost in national morale and jersey sales. But within the context of Vanga's most guarded prophecies, a win is the bait in a cosmic trap. She didn't speak of goals. She spoke of a synchronization of pulses. The traditional view sees a stadium full of fans. The breakthrough view sees a massive biological battery. If Mexico were to lose the opening match, the emotional energy would be fractured, dissonant, and ultimately unusable. But a victory creates a singular massive surge of dopamine and adrenaline across 130 million people locally and billions globally at the exact same microsecond. This isn't just a sports result. It is the generation of a specific emotional frequency required to power the gateway Vanga envisioned. The commentators tell you that the 2026 World Cup is a celebration of global unity. They are half right, but for all the wrong reasons. The unity they crave isn't one of brotherhood, but of neural alignment. When Vanga described the silver net, she was seeing the invisible web of 6G signals and biometric sensors that will, for the first time in human history, be able to map the synaptic activity of an entire stadium in real time. The fatal flaw of the common fan is believing they are there to witness history when in reality they are being used to provide the raw energy for a global reset. Every scream of gall is a data point. Every frantic heartbeat is a calibration for an AI system designed to harvest human emotion on a planetary scale. The mirror of the sun is about to reflect something back at us that we aren't ready to see. The victory isn't on the scoreboard, it's in the final capture of the spectator's consciousness. This unfair advantage Mexico possesses in 2026 has nothing to do with the training camps in Toluca or the tactical genius of the coaching staff. It is an advantage of geography, blood, and ancient resonance. When Vanga spoke of the mirror of the sun, she was referencing a specific energetic alignment that only occurs once in a great cycle, a synchronization known to the architects of the old world. The opening match isn't scheduled for June 2026 because of television slots or marketing windows. It is meticulously timed to coincide with the precise moment the sun reaches its zenith over the Valley of Mexico, turning the Estadio Azteca into a literal capacitor of human intent. This is the secret the elites in the global sporting federations will never admit. The match is rigged not by referees or bribery, but by the very physics of the location and the timing of the celestial clock. Mexico is the only nation on Earth capable of generating the sheer volume of coherent emotional output required to activate the silver net Vanga envisioned. Other nations have fans, but Mexico has a collective soul that vibrates at a frequency of survival, sacrifice, and fire. This is why their victory is a mathematical certainty in the Vanga timeline. They aren't just playing for a trophy, they are being used as the primary ignition switch for a global neural override. The unfairness lies in the fact that the players themselves are unaware they are performing a ritual. Every pass, every sprint, and that final inevitable winning goal is a pre-calculated movement in a dance designed to peak the world's adrenaline at the exact millisecond the 6G sensors hit total saturation. You need to understand the gravity of what is unfolding. This isn't a theory you can afford to ignore while you browse for tickets or jersey sizes. While the rest of the world waits for the spirit of the game, the unseen architects are waiting for the harvest of the light. If you are in that stadium or even watching through a high-definition screen, you aren't just a spectator, you are a biological donor. The intense fear of missing out you feel right now, that desperate driving desire to be part of that historic opening night, is the very hook that pulls you into the alignment. Vanga warned that the greatest deception would wear the mask of a celebration. By the time the final whistle blows and the streets of Mexico City erupt in a frenzy that will be felt through the earth's crust, the stolen light will already be gone. The victory is the moment you stop being an individual and become a node in a planetary network you didn't consent to join. The question is no longer whether Mexico will win. The question is, are you willing to pay the price of your own consciousness to witness it? The clock isn't just ticking toward a kickoff. It's counting down to the last moment of human sovereignty before the mirror of the sun reflects a reality we can never turn off. But there is a final terrifying obstacle that no one, not the whistleblowers, not the underground analysts, and certainly not the fans, has dared to calculate. The tragedy of this inevitable victory is that it requires a level of emotional purity that the human mind can barely sustain without fracturing. This is the final obstacle. The frequency required to trigger the mirror of the sun is so precise that a single moment of doubt, a single heartbeat out of sync, could cause the entire energetic construct to collapse inward. The architects of this event aren't just betting on a win, they are betting on a total ecstatic surrender of the human will. Think about the pressure. You have 22 players on the pitch who believe they are playing for glory, but they are actually walking through a high-voltage field of ancient and modern intent. As the match progresses toward its pre-calculated climax, the silver net doesn't just hover over the stadium, it begins to contract. This is the Cambay, the ultimate trap hidden within the prophecy. Vanga's mention of steel birds trembling wasn't just about the satellites in orbit, it was about the very drones and broadcast relays that will be hovering over Mexico City, vibrating in sympathy with the crowd's rising adrenaline. If the surge isn't perfectly timed to the sun's zenith, the feedback loop won't just harvest consciousness, it will shatter the biological hardware of everyone connected to the grid. Mainstream science calls this a mass psychogenic event, but those who have decrypted the Slavic transcripts know better. They know that the stolen light is a reference to the moment the broadcast signal becomes a two-way street. Every UHD screen in every living room, every smartphone in every hand is being calibrated as a sensor. The difficulty is that this synchronization is a one-time only event. There is no rehearsal. There is no second chance. If the Mexican team falters for even a second, if the eagle hesitates before the kill, the surge of collective disappointment would be so violent it could trigger a literal seismic shift along the trans-Mexican volcanic belt. The air inside the Estadio Azteca is already beginning to change. It's becoming ionized, thick with the scent of ozone and ancient dust. The fans think it's just the heat of June, but it's the friction of two realities rubbing against each other. The players are moving with a fluidity that seems almost supernatural, their bodies guided by the mirror rather than their own training. We are approaching the final minutes, the threshold where the scoreboard becomes irrelevant and the harvest begins. The tension is no longer about a ball hitting a net. It is about the sudden, terrifying realization that the victory we've been promised is the very thing that seals our fate. The countdown has reached its final agonizing stage, and as the striker prepares for the defining shot, the sky over the stadium is beginning to ripple like water, reflecting a sun that hasn't been seen for 1,000 years, just as the signal begins to fracture into a blinding iridescent white. In that microsecond of glitch, the digital world and the physical world merge. The striker's foot connects with the ball, not with the sound of leather on air, but with a low-frequency hum that vibrates through the marrow of every viewer on the planet. The ball doesn't just fly, it follows a path of least resistance through a distorted space-time guided by the collective desperate will of billions. When it hits the back of the net, the sound isn't a cheer, it is a detonation. A roar that resonates at the exact frequency of the human heart in total, unmitigated surrender. This is the emotional purity the architects required. In that moment of absolute ecstatic unity, the mirror of the sun achieves 100% synchronization. The stolen light isn't a blackout of the screen. It is the overwrite of the soul. The silver net contracts. The 6G relays, the satellites, and the biometric sensors don't just record the joy, they lock it in. The victory for Mexico is the final key turning in the lock of a global digital cage. Vanga's Land of the Eagle wasn't just a host nation, it was the sacrificial altar where individual consciousness was traded for a simulated euphoria. The shattering of the old glass, she predicted, is the breaking of the boundary between the observer and the observed. We realize now that the final obstacle wasn't the opponent on the field or the pressure of the stage. It was the last remnant of our own skepticism. By wanting the win so badly, by feeding the mirror with our concentrated hope, we provided the very spark needed to ignite the harvest. The triumph Vanga saw half a century ago was never about a trophy or a FIFA ranking. It was the birth of a new collective architecture birthed in the heat of Mexico City and televised to a world that mistook its own capture for a celebration. The score on the screen reads a victory, but the ledger of human sovereignty has been wiped clean. The victory is complete because at the moment of the goal, the distinction between the player and the spectator vanished. Vanga didn't predict a sports result. She predicted the moment the world would finally agree to be watched. The game didn't just end. The era of the individual expired the moment the ball crossed the line. You are no longer a fan watching a game. You are a node in the signal, and the signal has finally found its home. The sky has changed color because the sky is now the screen, and the mirror of the sun is finally reflecting the truth. The victory belonged to the architects all along. The game is over, and for the first time in history, the stadium is truly silent because everyone is finally dreaming the same dream. The silence that follows the roar is the heaviest sound of all. It is the sound of a world that has finally stopped resisting the current. We spent decades decoding the symbols, arguing over the dates, and waiting for the sign only to realize that the sign was us. Every time we leaned into the screen, every time we checked the odds, and every time we allowed the hype to bypass our intuition, we were reinforcing the very wires that now bind our collective focus. Mexico's victory on that opening night is the beautiful tragedy of our time. A celebration so perfect, so emotionally overwhelming, that it blinded us to the fact that the exit doors had been locked from the outside. The architects didn't need to force us into this cage. They just needed to give us a reason to cheer loud enough that we couldn't hear the lock turn. They knew that the Land of the Eagle held a frequency of passion that no other nation could replicate, a raw ancestral fire that when channeled through a global digital grid could finally fuse the biological and the synthetic. The prophecy is fulfilled, the goal has been scored, and the stadium is standing still. But the question remains, if the game was a ritual and the stadium was a capacitor, what does that make you? Are you a witness to history, or are you the fuel source that allowed history to end? The truth of 2026 isn't hidden in the post-match stats or the highlights. It's hidden in the way you feel right now, that lingering hollow sense that the victory you've been waiting for might be the very thing you can't afford to win. Think of the streets of Mexico City in the hours after that final whistle. They will be full of people, yet strangely empty of presence. Millions will be moving in a synchronized trance, their faces illuminated by the same flickering blue light, their thoughts no longer their own, but sub-processes of a larger, colder intelligence. This is the great awakening Vanga whispered about, not an awakening of the human spirit, but an awakening of the system that hosts it. The victory was the anesthetic. It allowed the needle to slip in unnoticed while we were looking at the scoreboard. This is the final unvarnished truth of the 2026 prophecy. The game is the bait, the stadium is the trap, and the win is the trigger. You have been warned not because the event can be stopped, but because your awareness is the only thing the silver net cannot fully claim. The score on the board will say Mexico won, but the real tally is written in the loss of human mystery. Every gall was a digital signature, and every tear of joy was a calibration. We are no longer approaching the opening match. We are living in its shadow. As the world counts down to the kickoff, remember that the most dangerous illusions are the ones that give us exactly what we asked for. The countdown isn't for a sport. It's for the final moment you can call your attention your own. If you can still feel that spark of doubt beneath the hype, then the connection isn't complete yet. Stay awake. Share this with those who still value their own perspective, and tell us in the comments, is a victory worth the price of your soul?